Good evening, America, and welcome to the Friday edition of Just the News. No Noise. Happy New Year to everybody. We start the new year with a bang. Yes, I'm going to get that in a second. First, all the formalities. I'm John Solomon, your co-host here in Washington, D.C., joined by Amanda Head, who will be with us in just a few seconds. A very newsy day here at Just the News, No Noise. President Trump this morning deciding that he will not make the same mistake that President Barack Obama did 16 years ago when he failed, Barack Obama did, failed to support Iranian protesters who were trying to overthrow the mullahs in that country. Today, President Trump made clear he stands with the protesters and warned that the United States is locked and loaded and ready to intervene if Iran continues to assassinate and kill those protesters who are just simply exercising free speech rights. We're going to get to a little bit more of that later in the show. Also today, a lot of news around the growing scandal of Democratic blue states and massive taxpayer fraud. Just the News, of course, began its reporting on the Minneapolis angle of that. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz all the way back in August of 2024. A lot of people caught up to that now. We're taking a look at California. Keep an eye out tomorrow on justthenews.com. We'll have a great story about just how much fraud and pervasive fraud there is under Gavin Newsom's reign in California, where the dollars and the figures and the population are much larger and therefore much consequential to you and me, the American taxpayers. With that, let me turn to my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. Amanda Head, Happy New Year. Good to be back with you. What do you got on your radar?
Good to see you, John. Yes, I've got a number of items on my radar. Number one, the FBI thwarting yet another reported terrorist attack, this time in North Carolina at a grocery store. And Director Kash Patel spoke about this and said, of course, that his agents are working around the clock. And it's not just in the major cities like New York and Los Angeles. We already knew about that terrorist attack that was planned for New Year's Eve in Los Angeles that was thwarted, thank goodness. But some other things, John, that are on my radar. Speaking of New York City, Mayor Mamdani, in his first action, wiping away some of the late-term actions by his predecessor, Mayor Eric Adams, and he's getting a lot of censure for one of the items that Mayor Eric Adams put in place, and that was protections for New York's Jewish community. So that's something that a lot of folks are very upset about. And also, John, California's new minimum wage hike starts this year. This is after a reported, I think it's 18,000 jobs were lost in the state as a result of the minimum wage hike from last year. This is now going up even more. But wouldn't you know, John, there are certain exceptions in this. Now, Gavin Newsom, I guess he attributes these nuances to the negotiation process, but it's interesting because one of the exemptions is for businesses that sell bread and it is at a certain weight before it cools. And you would think to yourself, why on earth would that be an exception in there? Well, wouldn't you know that one of the folks who owns the largest number of franchises of Panera Bread, a lot of those of which are in California, he donated to Gavin Newsom's campaign. So my goodness, we are uncovering all of this Minnesota fraud, but it's looking like California might have quite a bit of interesting stories to dig into as well. So we're going to stay on top of all of those stories.
Yeah, a lot to dig into in the Golden State, which seems like a golden opportunity for a lot of fraudsters, something we'll be tackling tomorrow. All right. We're going to kick the show off with a great interview that Amanda did a few weeks ago with Missouri Congressman Bob Onder to discuss one of the big pushes for 2026 among Republicans in Congress, affordability, including specifically one of the most important aspects of affordability, health care. Take a look.
We are here with Congressman Bob Onder from the great state of Missouri, and someone who practices medicine, so someone who can speak very authoritatively on health care and the stand that Republicans are taking with respect to. I've heard a lot of actual solutions for patching Obamacare. From what I understand from a lot of folks, as bad as Obamacare is, it has kind of reached its tentacles into the system so much so that it's going to be hard to replace it with an entirely new system. But I've heard some solutions to it. And I know you and a lot of Republicans have ideas on how to fix it. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, Amanda, thanks. It's great to be with you this morning. You know, the Democrats broke our healthcare system with Obamacare. They essentially expanded the role of government. They outlawed the private insurance market, and that led to a affordability crisis. There are a lot of areas today where we talk about affordability, but nowhere is the crisis worse than in healthcare. You know, the very year the Obamacare exchanges were implemented in 2014, insurance prices went up 47%. 1 year, and since then they've gone up 98%. So we do not need to be doubling down on a broken system. We need to be introducing market-oriented, consumer choice-driven reforms. So things like expanding health savings accounts, association health plans where groups of employers or other groups can get together and form their own plans, short-term health plans where people can buy the insurance that they want and need, not a one-size-fits-all, extremely expensive plan that some bureaucrat wrote for them.
How long would it take to not only get something like that passed, but also get it implemented? Because as we know, the healthcare system is a behemoth, and changing the mechanism is, to me, something that might take a lot of time, but maybe you see it a different way.
Well, I think we could do it. I think some of these things have strong support among Republicans in Congress, both House and Senate. I think common sense Democrats would also support reforms because, again, we can, without undoing the Obamacare behemoth, as you call it, and it is a behemoth, without rolling back Medicaid or anything, we can institute these reforms, and then consumers will choose what's best for them, saving enormous amounts of money right away in the short term. And I think ultimately then we can look at how do we treat folks who are poor, who need our help, who have pre-existing conditions, for instance. But we need to institute some more market reforms, some more consumer-driven reforms into this system.
Yeah, because, anytime you open up a market, whether it's healthcare, whether it's agriculture, whatever the case may be, when you make it look more like the free market, then you create that competition. And I know during President Trump's first term, one of the things that he was lobbying hard for was cross-state competition, where you didn't have, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. It was Blue Cross Blue Shield, regional or even national. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, competition across state lines could be huge, as could allowing more entrants into the healthcare system. Things like certificate of need laws and bans on physician ownership of hospitals. These are antiquated approaches to healthcare. Yeah, even in healthcare, as dysfunctional as the system is in many ways, where you actually see market competition, things like LASIK eye surgery, plastic surgery, these various hormone clinics and so on, you see vigorous competition and you see quality go up and prices go down. That hasn't happened otherwise in our dysfunctional healthcare system, and that is the role of government. Government has been the problem. Now it's time for government to allow free market solutions to fix the problem.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about another aspect of healthcare and the damage that we saw, frankly, from COVID. A lot of people lost trust of a lot of the governmental institutions that are supposed to offer wisdom on guidance like vaccines and things like that. You, as a physician, have you noticed in your own practice parents or even, people with autonomy over their own bodies who are now more apprehensive to getting vaccines, and maybe when they hear health guidance, maybe they just don't believe it?
Yeah, this loss of trust in our public health system, I've seen it not only in my patients, I've seen it in myself. When I went to medical school, I implicitly trusted the American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, the NIH. I do not anymore because we were given such bad advice over and over again. Everything that someone brought forth, people like Jay Bhattacharya, who now runs the NIH, Marty McCary, who now runs the FDA, they were speaking common sense and truth, and they were labeled misinformation. They were deplatformed. So I am seeing more, hesitancy for vaccines. Look, I think some of the traditional vaccines that we've been giving for decades, MMR, DPT, polio, they have done an enormous amount of good. But it seems to me the public health officials are too eager to just take any vaccine that the pharma industry comes up with and add it to the mandatory vaccination schedule. There's no reason to be vaccinating babies for hepatitis B, and there's no reason children need COVID vaccines plans whatsoever. No, I think we're seeing some distrust. Hopefully, I think what we're seeing is a rebalancing and no longer taking these bureaucratic diktats at face value.
You know, I think of our founding fathers and the healthy level of distrust that they had for government, and I feel like when it came to our government and health agencies, we lost that. And there should be a healthy level of maybe not distrust, but skepticism, as you said. So I think that's great. I want to ask you about Republican priorities heading into midterms, because you got the one big beautiful bill passed. If there can be some patchwork done to Obamacare where Americans can feel real, tangible results very soon, I think that that's going to be a big feather in your cap heading into the midterms. But what do you see as priorities that will help push you guys across the finish line so you can keep and maybe even expand the majority?
Well, I think what's on everyone's mind these days is affordability. And already under President Trump and Republican leadership, we've seen an improvement in affordability, a decrease in inflation down to about 2.4%. We've seen mortgage interest rates down 70 basis points, about 10% since January. So we need to keep doing that. We're seeing real decreases, about 6.5% overall, in energy prices. I think people are seeing that at the pump. But we need to keep doing the same, because I think the affordability crisis fundamentally is due to the overspending, decades of overspending that went on steroids under the Biden administration, where we now are dealing with a $38 trillion deficit, $950 billion a year in interest on that debt. That's crowding out other investment, crowding out opportunities for young people to buy homes. I think we need to keep working on improving our economy, affordability, reducing inflation, and increasing economic growth and jobs.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I know that we all who are here on Capitol Hill, here at the Cannon Building, we would all like to think that people pay attention to the nitty-gritty legislation and the nuances of things that happen up here. But at the end of the day, it's the kitchen table issues that matter. Speaking of kitchen table issues, this Thanksgiving we had Black Friday, we had Cyber Monday, and Democrats were trying their hardest to push people to not spend money because they wanted to push back against the Trump administration. And yet $11.8 billion later, people spent on, historic levels. It seems like the American people are feeling maybe a little bit more loose with their finances because they feel like good things are to come.
I think that's right. Despite the negativity just poured out day after day after day by the mainstream media, I think consumers are seeing, wait a second, maybe things are a little more affordable now. Maybe I can spend money on Christmas gifts, on long-term investments. I think that's right. And I think we need to stay the course, do more of the same. And yet we could do a lot better. We Republicans should be doing more to restrain spending. We should be doing more to open up affordable energy options, more, of course, to open up affordable health care options.
Wow, what a great conversation. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we got a chance to sit down with the new CEO of the NRA, Doug Hammond, and talk about all the important cases involving gun rights and the efforts of how gun rights will play out in the 2026 election. We're going to have that next, right after these messages.
The radical left knows exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted.
Seditious conspiracy.
But behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th, like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is not the story you were shown.
I take responsibility.
This is the story they lived.
Government entrapment scheme that this actually was.
The J6 patriots are no longer staying silent. They are speaking, they are standing, and they are telling the truth.
You can't kill us. You can't beat us.
They tried to silence them. Instead, they woke up an entire nation. The Sleeping Giant, coming soon.